In this unit, our goal is to go through wireless security and also to discuss mobile devices. So we'll talk about wireless security and mobile devices. I kind of put these two together. They're very closely related. Obviously, mobile devices rely heavily on wireless networks. So it does make sense to talk about the two together, but there is a lot of material in this unit, so bear with me as I kind of slog through all this material. So we're going to talk about, in this first presentation, I'm going to talk about just a quick overview of wireless security, and then just a quick objectives overview. Then I'll talk about Bluetooth and then near-field communications, which are most people, when they think about wireless security, they don't think about Bluetooth and near-field communication, but there are two protocols and two standards and technologies that we do need to be familiar with for IT security for a variety of reasons. And then we'll move into wireless networking in the next presentation. And then there's a final presentation where we're going to talk about mobile device security. So 3 different presentations in this unit. So first, let's go through these objectives. We're going to be able to describe the different types of wireless network attacks, vulnerabilities in security for wireless, and explain solutions for securing wireless networks. So we're going to talk about wireless data communications and how they've revolutionized computer networking. Talk about wireless data networks found virtually everywhere, and wireless networks, how they're the targets for attackers and why attackers target them. And then early wireless networking standards that had vulnerabilities. We'll talk about some of those, and we'll talk about some of the newer standards that fix those vulnerabilities and why we should be using those newer standards. So there are several attacks that can be directed against wireless data systems, which can include Bluetooth, near field, and wireless local area networks. So those are the 3 basic technologies that we're going to talk about where we most commonly see wireless attacks. There are other wireless attacks that exist, but they're a little more abstract, and some of it's just things that we really can't do much about. One of my favorite examples is the old the Van Eck attack, where you basically can use the transmissions, the wireless signals coming from a monitor, right? So when a monitor is displaying information, there's electronics in that monitor that are emitting electromagnetic radiation that you could pick up with an antenna from a very far distance if you have enough of a gain on that antenna, and then you can reconstruct what's on that monitor. Technically, that's a wireless attack, but we're not going to talk about those more abstract attacks. We're going to talk about rather specific attacks on technologies that we use for wireless networking, which are these 3: Bluetooth, near field, and wireless local area networks. So let's get started talking about Bluetooth, which is a wireless technology for short-range radio frequency transmissions. So it's good for rapid ad hoc device pairings. I'm sure all of you have used Bluetooth. Maybe you have a Bluetooth headset, maybe you've got some kind of Bluetooth device. Another term for this is personal area network, because you have all these personal devices on your person that has a sort of this little bubble of a network that's around you. Or maybe in your car is sort of a bubble of a network, and cars have been supporting Bluetooth for a pretty long time. I think cars as old as 5 years ago, it was common to have Bluetooth in vehicles. So it certainly is a technology that's rather ubiquitous now. So it provides virtually instantaneous connections between Bluetooth-enabled devices and receiver. But good grief, whenever I see that in these textbooks, I think, gosh, why can't it be instantaneous in my car when I can't get my phone to pair with my car radio? But in a perfect world, when everything's configured correctly and things work, then it's fairly instantaneous. The current version of Bluetooth is version 4.0 as of my recording of this video. That, of course, may have changed since then. Here are some categories of things that we use Bluetooth for, like our cars, for hands-free calling, home entertainment like stereo headphones, portable music players. Now they have light bulbs that have Bluetooth speakers in them. You can pair your phone with a Bluetooth light bulb, and it can play the music through the light bulb. Why somebody thought of putting a speaker on a light bulb is beyond me, but they have them, and you can go buy them at Lowe's or Home Depot. Photographs, you've got these these photograph things on the wall that can show photographs, computer accessories, gaming, sports and fitness, like those little wearables you can use that can detect your heart rate and so forth and so on. Medical and health, like blood pressure. I had a device on my phone that could take a EKG. So you had these little suction cups you would put on your chest and on your leg, and it would read an EKG using Bluetooth on your phone in real time, and it would keep a copy of that EKG and send it to your doctor if you have a heart problem. So it's pretty interesting, some of this stuff, but in any event, Bluetooth is a rather, like I said, a ubiquitous technology now. It exists everywhere. Everyone in a building, probably, a large percentage of them are going to have Bluetooth devices on their person, so It's important to understand them from that perspective, and we may be using Bluetooth or leveraging that technology for things within our infrastructure that we have to be aware of. So there are two Bluetooth topologies. There's PicoNet and ScatterNet. Basically, a PicoNet, which is what you see here, is when you have, so the M is the master. So that might be something like your, let's say you have a cell phone and you've got these different devices that you can connect to your cell phone with Bluetooth. Yep, that bubble that you see would be your master device connecting these various devices to it. So that's a Pico network. And in some cases, you can have a single device connected to multiple master networks, which is a ScatterNet when you have multiple devices connected to multiple devices. So you can see how this can get rather confusing. Kind of looks like a Venn diagram in this example, but you can see how you might have devices that are spanning multiple networks if they're configured to do that. Not all Bluetooth devices can do this, but it's certainly something that could be done. So there are two primary types of Bluetooth attacks that your book talks about. And there's a generic term for both of these attacks, but there's lots of different techniques and methods to carry out these attacks. Bluejacking is the term we use when we're talking about getting information into a phone or into a device using Bluetooth. So for example, if you have a cell phone, somebody could use Bluejacking to send you text messages, images, and sounds to your phone that you're not requesting, that it's all unsolicited messages and images and sounds. So attackers could use this more of a nuisance, really, than more so than using it for something nefarious. But again, there was just a story the other day about a TV screen in a large monitor in a train station that was basically displaying porn because and I don't think it was a Bluetooth attack, but you kind of get the idea that Bluetooth can control so many different types of devices. There could be some interesting things you could do to cause a nuisance in a corporate infrastructure, depending on how Bluetooth is used. But important takeaway here is that Bluejacking is more of a nuisance problem than it is a data leakage problem. But the opposite is true for Bluesnarfing. Bluesnarfing is when people can gain access to wireless information on your device somehow. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. So often can happen between cell phones and laptops. So basically, the attacker can copy over emails, contacts, images, videos, and so forth. I'm sure you've heard about some of these leaks of sex tapes and images, like naked images of famous people. And one of the ways that these unscrupulous reporters and things get a hold of that data is the attackers use Bluesnarfing as an example to get that data from those phones. You just have to have close enough proximity for the Bluesnarfing to work. Now, one thing I want to mention about Bluesnarfing, your book doesn't talk about any specific techniques for Bluesnarfing. There are different techniques and different versions of Bluetooth. It's like anything else, it's a cat and mouse game. New versions come out that patch the old problems, but then hackers discover new problems. So it's important to know that no matter what version of Bluetooth you're on, there's always some way that somebody's going to find a way around that wall that we build to protect those devices. There's always that one little chink in the armor that somebody discovers. So, I always find it's important to think about that, not because I'm being paranoid, but, we want to make sure that we're not putting really sensitive data on devices where we're exposing Bluetooth, because there is always that possibility that someone's going to be able to get that data. Another example of a technology that's wireless, so we talked about Bluetooth already, which is the first example. The second one your book talks about is near field communication, or NFC, which is low speed, very low power for smartphones and smart cards. The thing about NFC that's important to understand is that it requires very close proximity for most devices. So a lot of students will tell me, you have to physically tap these devices together, or they have to be so close together. Why would I worry about an attack with NFC? Because I would obviously know that somebody's attacking that device. And there's a couple things that you have to worry about with NFC. One thing is they're used frequently for contactless payment systems, so the consumer can pay for something, for example, with their smartphone, or they can use a virtual wallet for these different loyalty programs and things like that. But there's some risks. By the way, there's an example of what it looks like. But there's some risks with NFC, even if, number one, even though it requires very close proximity, that's not to say that somebody can't have some device that can work with NFC from further away because they've manipulated the protocol, the standard, and the technology to work that way. That's always possible. So we can't just assume that we have to have that close proximity. There may be a way to make it work without that proximity. Somebody could eavesdrop on that connection. Again, they could be further away than you thought when you're trying to make a payment or something like that, although most of the payment stuff is pretty well protected. But it's certainly possible that attackers are going to find a way around that. They can manipulate the data. They can jam the signal. They can do a man-in-the-middle attack where instead of you connecting to the device that you're trying to interact with, instead you're connecting to them and then they're connecting to the other device, very similar to man-in-the-middle attacks in other contexts that we've talked about it. And then somebody could steal a device, right? If somebody steals your smartphone, then they might be able to use your smartphone to pay for things. So hopefully you have a PIN number if you are using something like NFC to pay for things. So those are just some of the risks and some of the defenses that we have against those risks with NFC. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about wireless local area networks. And then the final video, obviously, is going to be mobile devices.